everybody, my name's Ben Elliott. It's great to be a part of this online expression of fresh streams for 2021. I'm the head of communications at The Well in Sheffield, and I'm also the founder of the Church Comms Collective, which is the biggest peer-to-peer support network for church communicators in the UK. A great place to be able to grow together and basically become better in terms of every aspect of church communications. You're welcome to join the Facebook group Church Comms Collective UK. So today we're going to unpack various different aspects. We're going to look at social media, at websites, broad communications in general. I'm going to give you some tips and pointers so you can go and take away and basically grow on what you're hearing. And also there might be areas which flare up for you thoughts of, I need to go deeper in that area. I have no idea what I'm doing. Hopefully there'll be some signposts here to enable you to take next steps and be able to grow in confidence in communicating effectively in this season and the seasons to come. We're going to break this down into chapters. We're going to dive right now into chapter 1. So chapter 1 is actually a huge encouragement to you. March 2020, COVID kicked off, and we leveraged this new opportunity of online to be able to continue to take what we knew of church and translate that into some kind of online experience where we could have continuity. We could provide opportunities for prayer, for worship, for teaching, and we could actually grow as a church. We also provided the opportunity for the unchurched to connect and plug in like never before. Effectively, the roof was lifted off the church and there was an opportunity to invite everybody in from the comfort of their own home. And that opportunity was there before, it is there now, and it will continue to be there. And we need to think, how best can we use these online vehicles to continue to actually take the message out there, to reach the unchurched, to provide resources to equip our church families. Many of the church might not have ever thought of seeing it that way before, and many are probably just partying the fact that the church is now so much more visible online than it ever was before. I don't think we should lose the gains we've made. We need to look into how can we make attractive and easy ways for people to be able to connect with the good news and make sure that the doors are wide open, and that online actually presents, in my opinion, the greatest opportunity to connect with people and draw them into a discipleship journey than any other way. It's an important aspect of communication strategy, full stop. And anybody who's heard me speak before will always hear that I always see digital as a vehicle to facilitate actual communications, one-to-one pieces. So it's not like I don't think that stuff should happen when it's safe to do so. We should definitely be together. This is the ticket, it's the posters, it's the equivalent of what we might see in terms of visual aspects to help start conversations, to be the triggers to find out more, to be able to have those nuggets of hope and reminders and worship when we need it. And actually the church building is closed because it's 3 o'clock in the morning and we really need to hone into some truth. We can dive into a great talk, or we can hear some truth spoken. It's there and it's present like it never has been before. So well done for using and doing everything you've done. Let's run forward with it and take this and actually see so many more people reached and blessed for the kingdom. So chapter 2 is all about audience. We as the church have the greatest products, the grace, the message of Jesus, the truth in the gospel. But we as the church don't always do the best job of actually marketing that product. And I'm sorry to use those words of product and marketing, but effectively there is something there that needs to be told about, and that's what the marketing is. We're just sharing the message. So how do we do that better? Now, digital is seen as this new thing to kind of step into, this new emerging thing, and in some respects it is, but actually it's been here for enough time now to actually make sure that we include it without a doubt within every aspect of our communications that we're doing. It always has to be considered, never an afterthought to add on now. It's part of every aspect that we're doing, every aspect that we're using. People have got different preferences for how they actually will connect. A lot of people watching this probably might love reading. It's understanding, actually presenting the message in a multitude of ways so that we can connect with people who've got different communication preferences. And some people won't want to watch anything on social media and be completely against it. And by all means, we need to make sure there's easy opportunities for those guys to connect in other ways. So by no means does this mean neglecting any aspect of our church community or the unchurched. It's just utilizing everything which is available as best we can for maximum impact. I hope that makes sense. So the first rule of good communications is to understand your audience. And the way I see it in quite simple terms is 2 groups. I always imagine our church building and I think about the people walking past, driving past, on the bus, What must they ask about what's going on inside? What visual things would open up questions for them to be able to actually want to find out more? What language would be the easiest way for them to understand things on their terms? The other group are the church family, the folk that are coming into our church buildings, that we're in relationship with, that are in the sanctuary, that are worshipping, that are on every aspect of the discipleship journey. They're the two kind of groups. And outward facing communications on a social media and website and things, for me, wants to be more geared towards the people walking past the church. The internal things, Facebook group, WhatsApp groups, private member pages, church suite, things like that, all geared more towards the people actually within the sanctuary of the church itself. Now, the important thing to understand as well is, whilst the internet and online creates an opportunity to communicate our message with everybody around the world, which is rather awesome, we have to understand, and I totally believe in the power of the local church. And it's when those digital tools are most effectively used in the local context that empower local conversations and actually lead to, when digital does what it does best, which is a stepping stone towards an actual one-to-one way people, group, context communication. That is what we're leaning for. And COVID has meant that many of us haven't been able to get together in the ways we want to, and maybe think, oh, now that's kind of going to be over. Let's put that aside and let's run back to the way that things were before. Well, digital actually still provides this huge vehicle opportunity to reach and love and bless those folks walking past and allow them to see actually, what we're running with, what we believe and what we're standing for. Our audience outside of the church is astronomically huger than what we have inside our churches, and therefore it should be given equal, if not more, time, in my opinion. These are my personal opinions, just want to put this out there. But I feel like we really need to make sure that it's given a huge amount of focus. This is how, we're taking the message out there. We want to bless people. We want to tell them about Jesus' love. We want to invite them in. We need to have serious time put into this. Otherwise, we're effectively closing our doors to people. And people are online, whether we like it or not. They are in these places. And that is where an opportunity exists as part of a journey to actually be able to be in relationship and disciple people. We can disciple them online. And I feel like there's a great opportunity there that we need to really actually not be too scared of, but actually go, no, we need to run with this. This is a huge opportunity, not to, forget other things, but an opportunity nonetheless to embrace and really make sure we give it the time of day. Now, if you're not comfortable and know how to use social media, and it's all these young upstarts doing different things, that might be your philosophy on stuff, and I appreciate that. Change can be hard. We need to look at actually how can we make that as easy as possible. Now, history of social media, let's go back to the start of Facebook, which was born out of the halls of Harvard. And it's reached this maturity now where every age and demographic is represented on there. And that tends to happen with social media networks, where they emerge out of a youth movement. TikTok, everybody dancing and have a good time. Where's it going to be in 3 or 4 years' time? Could it be the new main news source like Twitter is? Just because it started in one particular way doesn't mean it won't morph and change into other things as they mature. And new platforms will come along. And this is the other thing to really note in that journey as well, that platforms will come and grow and spike, and people have preferences for where they are. We need to make sure that we're actually adaptive to change. It might be they're only on a network for a certain amount of time, that we reach a handful of people there, and then we migrate to being on another network to make sure that we're moving with the times and adapting. We have to be prepared to let things go and know when to pick things up, and we can't do every channel under the sun unless you've got a huge team. It's about understanding where's best to focus our time. And coming back to the geography of these things, actually understanding the audience, the people outside, what kind of things are they experiencing their day to day? Now, I'm going to take the example of the Well. We're a church based on a main artery road into the city. We're close to universities. We've got some very established neighborhoods nearby and some more deprived areas. We've got a real array of people. And we've also got things like lots of businesses and shops on our doorstep. So how do we best present ourselves in that context? And these are questions which you need to ask yourself and answer to understand the people in your locality. What are their needs? How are they best going to interact? And quite frankly, if you're right beside, say, a school or a college, you would be bonkers not to be using Instagram Reels and TikTok on a regular basis, because there's people going past and they need to see and be able to connect in a way which is comfortable to them. If your church is in a prime location in the city centre around established businesses, particular sectors like that, then actually it might be wise to be on LinkedIn, which might sound completely crazy, but that platform could be a very good vehicle to reaching people in that context. So you need to look at the people that you're trying to reach and actually where are they and how best can you connect. Facebook is still the biggest network, and there's lots of talk about people coming and going on there and the growth of it and all this, or the not so much growth of it. But the reality is, it is still the biggest and most widely used social network. It would be a great foundation place to be, and I'm sure many of you have used that well during 2020 and going forward into 2021. So, audience, big thing to consider. It's a primary thing, and it feeds into so much. Actually, where do we put our energy in terms of our communication strategies? Chapter 3 is all about vision, values, and culture. So we need to take our vision, values, and culture and make sure that the way we visually and the type of written copy we use to talk about everything within the church has got a consistency to it. You need to create brand guidelines and stick to them to help that message feel really connected, so that if somebody sees a poster, it actually represents what's going on at the same time on your Instagram, for example. Brand guidelines, you can appoint a freelancer to pull them together for you or do them yourselves. Simple brand guidelines just need to be an A4 page, effectively, with your logo on. You have a header font, a sub-header font, and a body font, and kind of key color palettes that you want to use. And then just work with that across all of your communications so there's some consistency to it. You can also do the same with the type of images or graphics that you're going to use, so it looks like you. Make sure you're telling your story in your church context. One of the questions that feeds into that as well is, what do you want to see happen as a result of your communications? So to see this happen, we need to do what now? So having those kind of chats with others within the church, understanding why are we doing these things? Who are we wanting to reach? How are we going to reach them? What do you need to do to start that process? Today might be the day that you need to actually take your first steps on a new social media platform, or it might be the first steps to doing some specific design work to actually help tell the story in a better way. So what is it that you need to do to actually enable you to fulfill that communication goal? This next section is called chocolate and broccoli. What am I talking about with chocolate and broccoli? Well, chocolate tends to be, hopefully, a quick snack that you have. It's a short moment of great tastiness, and you really wouldn't eat huge meals of it, but you're going to enjoy a little bit now and then. Broccoli tends to be something which is performed as part of a broader meal. It's really good for you. There's a lot of good qualities to broccoli, and it's something which is considerably more wholesome for us. Okay, now what do I mean by that? Let's take chocolate as short form content and broccoli as long form content. Short form content is like 15-second mini videos on Instagram and TikTok and places like that. It's tiny little nuggets that just spark something off and hopefully cause a reaction. Long form is the bigger, longer interview pieces. It might be unpacking a particular word or teaching. A Sunday online experience will be more of a broccoli aspect. So we need to understand that both short form and long form content have their places, and how do we intersperse them and use them? We could think about the best times of day to share those kind of messages. The short form stuff probably could be best going to be first thing in the morning and last thing at night, with the long form more likely to be at times when people are more likely to engage with that, which is probably dependent actually the type of people you are on your audience. For myself, it's probably actually going to be maybe on a Saturday afternoon. We need to understand actually, again, who is our core target audience. When do we make this information live or premiered and available to people? Short form, long form, consider how and when you use it. So websites are really important. They tend to be the digital home of our churches. Connected to them and pointing in are all the different social media networks, and they themselves might come and go, and your website will come and go to some extent, but it will remain that central place. What do I mean by your website coming and going? Well, you need to change it every 2 to 4 years to make sure that we're staying on top of digital trends, the way that people use devices. 10 years ago, we didn't use smartphones in the way we do today. So we need to make sure that we're adapting to the way that people are actually using the online space and making sure that we're being current. Platforms like Squarespace, in my opinion, are some of the best networks to go to in terms of building a website. You can easily update and edit it using a mobile app. There are other versions, other companies available, WordPress, Wix and things like that. I commonly use Squarespace because I feel it's actually really user-friendly, it's affordable, it's just well integrated. We can have Church Suite, Google Calendar, all those types of things really easily embedded within it. YouTube streams and all those aspects. So make sure that your website's on point, make sure that you've got it right. Now, Squarespace have just announced as well a new member section within their website, which means it opens up a huge opportunity to make sure that the outward-facing website reaches the unchurched. Meanwhile, in the member aspect, we can actually have specific messages, specific teaching, stuff for people actually within the church and going deeper on their discipleship journey. It enables them to actually have a really easy place to be able to connect in that way. Other website platforms do provide similar opportunities as well. So use these tools for our audiences as best we can. Broadly speaking, people use social networks in different ways. Statuses on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, for example, often look quite different. So as churches, we can't do a one post to all in exactly the same way. We need to understand the quirks and qualms of each of these networks. Now, in the same breath, I want to tell you and make sure that you're aware that you can post to Facebook and Instagram at the same time for free from the Facebook Business Profile Manager. And there's also paid platforms out there like Buffer, Hootsuite, Sprout Social, which will allow us to be able to post to multiple platforms at the same time, which is really awesome. But make sure that the messaging and wording is slightly different and appropriate to the context in the place that you're sharing it. In the same way that we would deliver a message differently from the stage in the sanctuary on a Sunday morning than we would if we were telling somebody as they're walking past our church building. Remember, social media is actually really social ministry. We need to look at actually how are we blessing and speaking to people on a one-to-one rather than a broad brush message, thinking that it's appropriate in every context. So let's talk about design for a moment. We want to take the message of the gospel, the truth of Jesus, and we want to present that in a visually attractive way which reaches both the church family and the unchurched. Never before has it been easier to learn how to do so thanks to YouTube, with thousands and millions of tutorials and platforms which are free to use. Now, you might have someone in your church who is paid or volunteers to do that work. You might do it yourself. Either way, platforms like these really help. Canva, which is free for not-for-profits and I'd highly recommend utilizing. There are thousands of templates on there. You can apply your brand guidelines and you can produce everything from posters to Facebook banners. It's an incredible platform. Do make sure you use it. The Adobe suite, which covers everything from InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop through to video software also. It's never been easier to learn how to use these things thanks to YouTube tutorials. I myself knew nothing about this a few years ago, and having watched a few videos, I made my first steps and just keep growing all the time by learning how to do new things. I've started using the iPad app Procreate recently, which I found a great addition to my workflow, a great way to morph and play with pictures and illustrations. Not only is it fun, but actually you get some great things you can use in your church communications. Okay, we've got some specific social media tips we're going to whistle through right now, starting with YouTube. First off, make sure you've got a branded header, make sure your website is linked, create playlists on there so that you've got, for example, a worship playlist. You could use it to do a daily thought for the day, 2 minutes, pre-record them in advance and schedule them for a whole month so you've got that all sorted. Use it for live streaming on the Sundays, use it for sharing video updates. You can unlist videos so you can share them to specific people and groups. Make sure the name of the video is as attractive as possible so people want to click it, and make sure it's got bespoke artwork as well to make sure it stands out. Make sure the caption below answers what's going on in the video and provides a call to action link onto other things. Facebook is an amazing platform with great opportunities. Pages can be used really well to reach the unchurched, and groups allow for discipleship and people to be connected within the church family in fantastic ways. Make sure that they're well hosted, that there's guidelines. Think of it as a party, like how best can you introduce people within there, make sure that they're doing okay, and facilitate conversations. We need to be actively doing that to help them really grow and have value and make sure that they really feel like social elements. You might be braver than me in taking your first steps into TikTok. There is a huge opportunity to reach young people in that space. You don't have to do silly dances or whatever, you can do, but actually think of it more as short form videos. What little nuggets could you put out there to help people ask questions about things and lead them on to want to know more and actually connect with you to find out, and you can continue to feed these awesome little insights and revelations. There is a huge opportunity. That leads us on to Instagram nicely, which has reached maturity. There's people from every age demographic across there now. And it's got so many different aspects to it. We've got short form video content allowed in the form of Reels. We've got long form content in the form of IGTV. We've got short snippets of information with stories, and we've got the grid, which is there for longer lasting pieces as well. It's quite incredible, and you can tie in all the store aspects and the ways you can create groups and messaging within it as well. It is rather fantastic. If you're using it, I'm sure you know that. Look at ways you can actually build upon that. Watch some YouTube tutorials, look at accounts which are doing amazing things like Kingdom Company, a church in Manchester which are doing incredible stuff. Follow people like the Digital Church Toolkit. Those guys provide loads of great insights into great church communications. There are places to go to get some really good nuggets and grow your social media, and I'd recommend taking time out to do so. So we're coming into land, and I want to leave you with some recommendations to help improve your church communications. I would highly recommend checking out this book by Mark Crosby, head of Vineyard Church Communications, So Everyone Can Hear. It's an absolutely brilliant read. It's really digestible, it's visually beautiful, and it's just, I've got 3 copies. One in case someone needs it, one because I want to keep one looking nice, and the third one is so I can scribble notes within it. It's that good. My next recommendation is this book by Nona Jones, From Social Media to Social Ministry. I've not even read this yet. It arrived this morning from Amazon, but I'm that confident it's going to be brilliant because of the reviews I've read from people I trust, and because I've met Nona on a few occasions, and she's really got a finger on the pulse in terms of church communications. So I highly recommend checking this book out. Personally, my go-to for church communication tips and advice is Pro Church Tools, which is run by Brady Shearer over in Niagara in Canada. I highly recommend subscribing to their YouTube channel. He provides some amazing insights and great information to help you stay on the pulse with church communications and really be aware of what we can be doing. It's always on point, it's really helpful, and it's really easy to actually apply. I'd highly recommend that network as well. We've just started to peel back some aspects of church communications, a topic which we could talk hours on, weeks on. There's so much to get our heads around, and it's an ever-evolving thing as well. And I'm hoping questions have been stirred within you, and actually there's been things put on your heart of areas where maybe you think you need to go a little bit further, that you need to learn a little more about. You know, connect with others, join the Church Comms Collective and do that. Make sure you connect with other church leaders and talk about the challenges they're facing so that you can grow. Jump on YouTube tutorials, read books, invest in the people within your church community who actually will be really effective in this area and in this space. There's so much that we can do, and you know, it's easier than ever in some respects to do it, whilst at the same time I'm aware there's so much going on around us. But these opportunities are there. We need to understand our audience, see where the low-hanging fruit is, and use these tools to the best of our ability to be able to share the good news with them. So thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to our discussions on the Zoom call in a bit. And if you want to connect with me personally, do so via the Church Comms Collective or follow me on Instagram and we can connect on there. Bless you guys.
So I guess from my perspective, the context of my video that I did before, for those who saw it, it was ultimately to set out that there's obviously these kind of core areas in terms of communications, but in everything we do, it comes down to the fundamental first question that we ask, which is who is our audience and what is the most effective channels that we can use ultimately to engage with them. And each of us is going to be set in a geographically specific location, unlike anyone else. So our context, we're on a main road into the city centre. We've got lots of students nearby. We've actually got lots of very established, quite well-off homes, and we've actually got some quite deprived neighbourhoods contrasting on the other side. And actually trying to understand who are the people in our geographical vicinity, because for me, digital is at its best when it's actually helping to facilitate the local church do what we're doing and fulfilling our vision actually in our context. So that's really important. And the we have on this road specifically, we have, because of the types of traffic we have both on footfall and in buses and cars and those type of things, it's leveraging the external messages we can put out there, so we hopefully get people's eyes on the building. And then we also want to make sure that the brand story effectively, and the language we use, the type of images we use, is all joined in the digital thing. So if anybody connects with the well, from a poster at the front to a advert on Facebook through to the website, it looks like us. We're singing off the same hymn sheet, as it were. So from that point of view, I guess just a few couple of things just to think about is starting from there in terms of brand, both in terms of language and visuals. Those starting points come from asking questions about the audience, and are then fed into whether we use Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Nextdoor, whatever social networks we might use to kind of take those things forward, to get the message over. Now, again, each one of us, because of the types of people that are in our areas, because of the people that are in our congregation, are going to end up using potentially, hopefully, specific language to the context you're in. And again, being very clean cut pre-COVID, I had a very clear way of thinking about this, that all of our external communications, anything that went out really on Instagram, Facebook pages, and on the website, was designed to meet the understanding of somebody that would walk past the church and turn and go, what is this place? What's going on inside there? We want to make sure that it's accessible, that we're not denying in any way our faith or Christian terminology, but at the same time, we're making sure the words used are ones which people can relate to. So that's that. And then on the internal side, we've got the kind of context of the conversations we would have on the entrance as we come into church, in the cafe, in the sanctuary itself, post-church. And those conversations predominantly often help them actually working better in a more closed format. So a Facebook group, for example, or WhatsApp groups or threads and Zoom calls and things. So the way that we kind of split it in my mind is that now COVID lifted the roof off what goes on inside the church, and there was a real need for us to actually help those going by to actually more clearly understand it, which is actually, in my opinion, a pretty cool thing, because it allowed us to really, I guess, step up to the mark and kind of go, let's just take this all online, as I'm sure many of you have done in different contexts and things. So with that in mind, it also creates a kind of blurring in some respects of how do we get these messages through, and how do we create content which serves the needs of our church family, but at the same time actually helps draw people in an accessible way, rather than them being not accustomed, shall we say, to some of the formats. So I'd be really interested to find out a few things from you guys as well as we go through this, but just in terms of actually what you're currently doing, whether you feel that is meeting the needs of both those kind of core groups, and if not, I would love to know, like, if you've got specific questions around that. But maybe it would make sense just to try and some of the questions that have come up already, to kind of work through this in a chain of, let's go kind of social media first, we'll move it into kind of video and website, and we can talk broader kind of communication strategy off the top. So I think one of the first questions potentially that Susanna, you might have asked, was around unwanted comments, which I presume is in a social media context. Do you want to present that question a little broader? Or?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, it's so we have live streamed our services all the way through since the first lockdown in March, whether or not there have been people in the building, and whether or not we've been in the building. We're very fortunate to have a couple of key, very able technical people in the congregation who've enabled that to happen. And so the services and also a daily devotion Monday to Friday are posted on YouTube and on Facebook.
Right.
Facebook has actually been very straightforward. YouTube, every now and then we just get the odd girls kind of comments, which are quickly and easily taken down. But this Sunday, for the first time, Marcus, who's here, was overseeing the streaming of the service and noticed some unpleasant sort of vulgar comments coming through quite quickly, which he deleted as they appeared. So I suppose actually my first question is, my immediate reaction is to close that down and say to turn off the ability to comment, but then that closes down every other means of communication as well. And I just wondered really if you've got any tips for what to do. Sure.
Is this person a complete troll, or is it someone known to the church and specifically kind of?
Marcus knows, but I don't.
I didn't recognise the name, so I'm guessing just somebody who stumbled it up on the stream off on YouTube.
Okay.
Actually, also interesting to note that the number of views of that service was double the normal views. We normally get around 300, and it's up to 632 at the minute. So I'm just not sure if the two are linked.
Sure. Marcus, do you know, was there similarly that kind of volume of actual live viewers, or?
It was greater than it normally is. We normally hover around about 80 to 90, and we're hovering between about 100 and 120 most of the service yesterday.
Cool. And what time do you live stream?
10:30 till about 11:30.
Okay. So we found this at the Well, that a lot of, all of a sudden we've had a huge increase in viewers. I think we had 1,500 each respective Sunday. Prior to that, it was like 300. And I think the algorithm, so the maths engine, the way in YouTube and the way that works, is churches, I guess, are one of the few organizations which are consistently putting out that particular time of day, particular content. They'll be looking at any patterns for people that are also active online that time of day and thinking it might be because, you're here for that particular reason. They're presenting it. It's really hard to kind of completely guess, but inevitably more eyes on something is inevitably, it's not just kind of sharing it to your congregation and friends of friends. There's going to be Joe Public and people all around the world potentially are going to be it's going to be presented as something which they could watch. And now within that, I mean, our leader Marjorie messaged me like, Ben, we've got 4 thumbs down. And I was like, oh wow, 4, that's a new record.
We got 2.
Good problem to have, because at the same time there's like, double the number of likes we normally get in things, and inevitably that's the nature of the way things go. I'd always kind of say, if ever a person comments and it's anything which is inappropriate, if it's anything which is potentially lawful, things like racism, stuff like that, and it's a known person, I'd always screenshot it and save it for record in case it's needed for anything in the future. If it's anybody known, I would always try and take that conversation offline and I would speak with them afterwards if it's a congregation member. If it's a complete unknown troll, do your best to delete them, and hopefully they won't come back again. If you can block them from the channel, then do so. Inevitably, a good problem to have, I guess, in a way, is the higher volume we get on these things, the more likelihood there is of, the odd pain coming through, should I put it that way. But my approach always actually with handling in any sense in social media, conflict and things is actually, it's an opportunity to demonstrate Jesus and an opportunity to demonstrate love. So in the first part, I try and be civil and look at a way to actually opening a conversation and take it offline. And if, because that way you're actually demonstrating the way that you're, as a church organization, behaving in that context, gives them the opportunity to be civil. And if they're not, then remove or, block them and things. But I do see negative stuff often as an opportunity to actually show our true colors, which is often big corporations, for example, don't do that very well. I think we as a church can set a bit of a benchmark for that. But hopefully get a lot of high viewing figures and less of the girls and all that kind of stuff. The way that a lot of the time, by the way, these aren't necessarily someone actually sat there doing it. It'll be AI and bots and stuff that are set up to do it, and quite how they think, churches are a target audience for that stuff, I don't know, but there we go. Can't hear you, Susanna. Do you want? Oh, we still can't hear you, my friend. Sorry. Say again. If you want to add something else to the message on the chat, I can answer from there. By the way, guys, I'm literally going to put my email address in there to everybody now. If after this there's anything which you'd like to ask me about further, or if you want me to look specifically at your social media website or anything, I don't mind doing a quick 5-10 minute gander through and any points and stuff which come up, give you some friendly feedback and things. Nick, I think you're raising your hand.
Yeah, thanks. In regard to how many views you get and that sort of thing, does the title play any part in that? In other words, do we need to be thinking about, I mean, obviously we want it to be, the title and the description and stuff to be engaging, but are there, does that have any sort of bearing on how it's distributed and who it reaches?
Sure. My understanding is it does. And the algorithm that these big organizations, YouTube, Facebook and stuff run is ever changing. But the key thing at the minute I've noticed on YouTube, for example, is that the hashtags you can apply aren't actually part of the ranking of how things come up in search, which is odd because they really used to be, but more of actually answering a search query in that title as much as possible. Now, often, obviously, a Sunday gathering isn't necessarily answering a specific problem, but potentially the word you're giving, the teaching on that particular day is, if it's on a particular theme. What does God say about the state of X in the world today or whatever? But try and think, what question would someone be searching which that particular video would answer? Trying to think of it in that way would be would be really useful.
Yeah. Cool.
So Susanna was just saying off the back of her thing, do you mind if I read this out, Susanna? Is that okay? Yeah. So just wanted to clarify, you would prefer to leave the ability to comment open rather than disallowing commenting. And yeah, I would. It's like, if taking in terms of the world, if one person turned up on a Sunday morning at church and was a right toe rag and cause some problems, we wouldn't tell everybody else to not come back again. We keep the doors open as much as possible. So hopefully we don't have too many rascals, and then it's just a case of navigating it well when they do. I'm just going to say hello to Karen and friend who've joined midway through. So we're going through kind of general communication questions around church communication. So anytime you guys want to pipe up, please unmute yourself and do so. So is there any other specific questions around social media? I think there was a couple of other things come up, but someone else want to answer before we move on?
Can I just add with the comments thing on YouTube, we're actually not allowed comments on our YouTube because we're a kids channel, so we don't have that option. But for our theatre company, we could have comments when we did a lot of live streams at Christmas. And for us, we, particularly there was one show that was just crazy. So we appointed several moderators for the comments. So you can have more than one person just like checking the comments, which is really useful.
That's great, Natalie. And is that just an option when what was your live streaming method?
You.
We were using Switcher, which is just a kind of platform for using different whatever devices. But it was just streaming to YouTube.
Live through YouTube.
So were the administrators logging in via Switcher, or were they logging in?
No, just YouTube.
On their YouTube account.
So through when you're live streaming, you can choose just whoever on the comments. You can make them an administrator through the comment section itself. So if you're, the one who's live streaming, you're signed in, and you can just left click on someone's comment on their kind of handle and make them an administrator. You can do it to anyone. But it might just be worth, as you're starting your live stream, you've got someone who's watching who their job is being moderator. They don't have to worry about the tech, they don't have to worry about what's being said. We had it where we had a school and the bubble had burst, so everyone was watching from home. They're supposed to be watching with parents, but they weren't. And we had about 100 kids just with no filter, just absolutely going nuts. So the guy who was playing moderator had a very fun show. In fact, there was two or three of us moderating simultaneously when one of them was like, just everyone spam A. And they have to try and delete them as quick as they came up.
And you can put people in timeout as well, so then they can't comment for a certain amount of time, which is really useful as well.
Very good thoughts. I think with the whole thing I was saying as well a second ago about unwanted comments and things, there might be some sermons or some times when actually the best thing for the audience is there's not the distraction of the commenting ability. So that's something, there's a discernment, you're not closing up the church by not having that facility. I don't want to kind of make you think that you have to have it there all the time. So that comes down, I guess, again, to audience understanding. It might be there's a sensitive topic that's been covered, and actually we don't need to have everyone else's opinion at that time. It's important to focus on what the actual, the message which is being delivered. Cool. So any other kind of stuff around commenting social media wise? And if not, I think maybe it'd be cool to actually go into kind of platform specific stuff, if that's useful for people, because the way we present content on different social media networks, is slightly different, and it's more likely to reach different people. If we do a show of hands, let's just go around. I'd be really intrigued to see how this works. So who here is from a church that's got Facebook? Okay, most of us. Okay, Twitter. Okay, Instagram. Okay, TikTok. Okay, YouTube. Okay, cool. And anything I've not mentioned. Okay, cool. So with Instagram, for those that are active on Instagram, you might be doing and know more than I do. I try my best every few months just to kind of look at what's happening on Instagram and get some tips from, not necessarily within church circles, but just kind of look at the way people are saying things about the algorithm. So recently Instagram brought in Reels, which is their kind of version of TikTok of Instagram users. Anyone done any Reels yet? No, okay, so Reels is essentially a short form video up to 15 seconds long. It's the type of thing which actually is ideal for saying, let's say you are meeting as a church, you could do a really quick, we did this actually for when we were allowed back in September, just to welcome people back into church. We did a very quick, here's where you sanitize your hands, here's where you have your seat, here's where this is. And it was just a really quick way to kind of let people know in a fun, informal way that the church is open, you're welcome, this is how we made it COVID safe. And it's, again, understanding like what's the context of how we use these different kind of formats. But anyway, churches and people that did use Reels when it came out, the algorithm, again, that's the way things get churned and decide what people see. They wanted you to use this new format. So the more that you use that, the higher ranking your profile will be effectively. So if you're able to keep your eye out on what new things Instagram do bring in and release, and the same with most social networks, if you step onto those things early, your content is more likely to be seen by people outside of your typical kind of context. And one top thing that I always try to do with Instagram, going back to the keeping it local, is I always tag the location broadly as Sheffield rather than the church specifically, because more people will put the city down than a specific location. And when they search Sheffield, there's more likelihood that people will see it, because Joe Blogs isn't necessarily going to search the well in Sheffield as a location. But they are maybe going to tag themselves in Sheffield. I also always tag areas and street names nearby as a hashtag. So we're on Ecclesall Road, so I'll tag that. We've got the university nearby, so I'll always hashtag the universities that are nearby and things, in the hope as well that our content might be searched by the people who are actually searching in for information relating to those things, in the hope that they come across what we're doing. And that ties in as well, I guess, to having kind of a broad message in terms of what we're doing and making it as open as possible. And in terms of the language that we use, we never, I try my absolute best where possible to not use we and us. So it's never come join us or we welcome you, things like that. It's come join the well. And because we don't want it to, this is just my take on it, respect to yours, but I don't want to be an us and them type thing. It's like, it is at the well, this is happening at the well, blah, 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 blah. If there's ever a person involved, then yeah, we can use specific names and stuff, like introducing guest speakers or whatever. But trying to make that known amongst the locality. And I also do my best where possible to comment on local businesses to us that are liking and engaging with their content. Because again, when you are active and actually engaging with others rather than just being outwardly producing content, again, it's favourable in terms of how you're going to be seen, both by those who perceive you and also actually the way the algorithm works and things is all good news. So is there any specific Instagram things that people want to raise? I might not be able to answer, but I can try my best and someone else here might be able to. Or are we all happy in that way? No specific questions. Okay, cool. Facebook. A lot of people are on Facebook. Out of interest, hand up if you have a page and a group at your church. Okay, only a couple of you. Okay, interesting. So those who are using Facebook, are using, is that predominantly pages? Hands up for a page, yeah. Okay, and then how many? And then anyone's just for group and not a page. Okay. So the way that we use Facebook actually best relates to the example I gave at the start, where we consider those that aren't yet part of the church family, that might be walking past and coming across the church, and those that are likely to be inside the church, conversations in the sanctuary. So we have several private Facebook groups. We've got a broad members one, we've got one for the under 30s, we've got a student one, we've got young families with kids under the age of 14, Then there's kind of a few sports ones for the footballers and other people that might be doing stuff. But there's a whole network there, so you can effectively connect with community within community, which is applicable to you. The broad member group is definitely the most active one. It's a safe space. The idea being that it's predominantly focused around prayer requests and information relating to what's going on in the church. You effectively set the terms of what these groups are. I run a thing called the Church Comms Collective. I don't know if any of you guys are part of that. Anyone in the Church Comms Collective? No, okay, great. So it's a Facebook group, which is basically designed to be a peer-to-peer support network for people that do my job. Because I was like, where do I go to find others that are facing these same kind of things that I do? And so whether it's people involved in social media, website, poster design, ministers themselves, whatever. And that very Facebook group, the whole point of it, the way I see myself in moderating that, is basically being a good party host. So if I was hosting a party at my door, when a guest arrives at the door, I welcome them. I let them know they're so welcome to be here. I probably give them a drink and a pork pie or something along those lines. And then I'd say, you just moved in down the road. You know what? I know so-and-so that lives down the road. Let me introduce you guys, have a conversation. And I do the same I try to do the same type of thing within the Facebook group with the Church Comms Collective. We've gone up from 300 members to about 1,100 now. That leap being from March when COVID hit. And there was obviously a lot of other people thinking, crikey, how do we go about doing this? But that principle continues, and I always try to put a welcome message on there. You can go into the member section, see who's joined this week, and welcome that new member. I always do it with a cheesy GIF, I know, a waving Mr. Bean or something like that, something which is completely, hopefully going to de-ice people and kind of go, oh yeah, this is an all right bunch. And the point really is to make them feel welcome, try and connect them else with someone else, or find out what their big issue right now in church communications is, why they join this group, how can help them. And the same thing could be said within a church Facebook group. It could be that they're a known member of the church family. It could be they're from outside. And giving an opportunity to them to feel welcome is just, in my opinion, so important. That's something we want to do to a new person as they enter the church, is to really, not right now, but wrap our arms around them as much as we can. So that's just the core kind of principle within groups. Is there any questions about Facebook groups and how to use them best? If not, I'll move on to pages.
Quick question. Do you use closed groups or are you talking about open groups as well?
We only use closed groups. Yeah, within our specific church context. It might be that in your context, an open group could work well. And one of the benefits of an open group, obviously, is that it's people outside can see what's going on, and the conversations are still led by the members of that group, which is a wonderful thing. The reason we keep our church group closed, and actually the Church Comms Collective that I run, is because groups are at their strongest when they gather around a core reason for being a part of that, and to protect that and give people the security and the safety to be able to operate in that context is, in my opinion, that it thrives very well when it's private. So in our church context, we want people to know that I'd hope that they can imagine it's the equivalent of them standing up on stage at the front and saying, this is our situation right now, we'd really appreciate your prayer, guys. And if they didn't feel comfortable doing that on the front stage, they shouldn't be sharing it in that group context, if that makes sense. There's a difference between doing it on the sanctuary and standing on the doorstep of the church with a megaphone and shouting it to everybody as they go past. That is the equivalent of a public group. The difference is that megaphone could reach around the other side of the world and back. So it's kind of thinking what's best for the health of this group and the objectives that you're trying to get. As Facebook groups operate, there's some that are superb in terms of fulfilling a useful need. So I'm a member of a sales and swaps group here in Sheffield, for example, and I get daily information of, garden gnome for sale for £1.50, or National Geographic magazines that are left over and things. It could be that in a church context, a great way to meet the needs of your community is to have an open group, which operates as a sales and swaps platform and actually fulfills the type of thing which churches might have done in terms of a jumble sale type of thing back when we could do those type of things in a church hall. Like, it could facilitate that and moderate that and help provide a useful way for people to connect. But that ultimately comes back to that core thing of your audience, the vision, and actually how is it best to use that particular platform. Time is obviously such a specific thing, and it's using that effectively as well. There's a million and one things I would like to do, but just literally not the time to deliver all those type of things. Okay, cool. Were you going to ask a question, Susanna, about groups? Don't matter, I'm reading you because your audio is not working for some reason. Crikey. Feel free to pop up any more bit on that frame of things. So with Facebook pages, which is effectively the shop window for our churches on Facebook, that provides a great opportunity. I imagine that some of you that are live streaming might be using Facebook pages to do that. Is that true? Okay. Well, we stream to Facebook and to YouTube, excuse me. And it's interesting looking at figures. Dipped for us a bit on Facebook, but YouTube, because I think you can play it on TVs and things like that a little more easily. It's maintained its kind of engagement levels, but Facebook itself is the biggest social network in the world, and is undeniably a great platform for reaching a wide-ranging demographic. So well done for being on there. That sounds patronising, but I mean it. It's not easy all the time. One of the things on there that you can do just to kind of try and boost things as well is try and mix up the content if possible, to split between like, I guess, promotional and the actual social side of things, actually trying to create things which would actually engage with and create conversations. Now, us Brits aren't so good at doing this type of thing, but a lot of the US churches do this to great standard, whereby, times like right now, they put out things like, top 5 movies to check out during lockdown or over Christmas and things, or what's your favorite chocolate bar, kind of stuff like that. Now, you might, what on earth is the point of putting out what's your favorite chocolate bar? Well, it's the type of post which a lot of people will bite upon, excuse the pun, but the important thing is once they do, the content that that they stop to look at or engage with, the algorithm then says, oh, they've stopped to look at your church's stuff before, they're more likely to want to see that stuff again. So it's more likely to have stuff presented to them again and again. So if you can find a way to do stuff. So I made a mistake back in when the clocks changed, October, and I did the classic thing in the time moment of saying we should go back and we should go forward, or whichever way around it is. I still don't know. And it was the most commented post of the year, after everyone pulled me apart for the area, and not just church congregates, but broader reach. And I thought, actually, this is a great problem to have, because all of a sudden, all these people are going to see for the next few days the posts that I put out, and hopefully they're engaged with that. So, if you can make, I think one of the something which people engage with. One of the things which I think St. Thomas's Church in Crooks did well. They did you might have done the same, but they did outtakes from some of their online services which have gone wrong, and there's the kind of fluffs that we've all made at some point in the last 12 months, no doubt. Again, it's funny, people kind of engage with it, and actually bringing a bit of fun to things is actually quite a great way of opening up the door to conversations. The other thing you might not do is actually creating events for your online streams. So if you're going to run a Sunday stream, actually creating an event for it. Again, having events listed, people sometimes do that geographically, so you can list it as your location, and it might be a good way to invite or encourage a link then to be shared between the church congregants to share for join us this week at church online, as it were. But trying to look at ways you can actually create social rather than just kind of promoting things is a challenge I face. Just like, I'm not getting it right all the time. One of the problems we've got at the minute is we have a fantastic data rota of people that are doing a thought for the day. And I've been so busy with some bigger strategic stuff that's all our Facebook is in the minute, which frustrates me, because we don't want us to be thought for the day. We want to be creating conversations throughout the day. So that's what I'm going with that one. Facebook pages, everybody. Is there any specific questions about Facebook and ways that could, any challenges you faced or any questions you've got around Facebook? No, all quiet on the Western Front. Okay, cool. Moving forwards, is there any other questions around any other aspects of social media? If not, I'll do a quick 60-second thing. So it could be in any other platforms. Okay, one thing I'm going to say is this. Where possible, it's best not to get too comfortable with the way we do things. And I know that can sound scary at times, but social media is a constantly changing thing, and we need to be adaptive to change. So that's the way things are going. The way that we use our devices, phones, iPads, computers, whatever else, that technology is changing. Voice recognition will change things. If you look at the way short form video, these 10-second, 15 nuggets have started to pop up and things in the forms of things like TikTok, which some of you might have no idea what that is, but it is an app effectively with short form videos on which you can do silly dances and dance along to music and share things. Or, as some people are doing, you can really create very wholesome short words for the day. You can create great, 15 seconds. Actually, you can tell them in a nutshell as a challenge, tell them the gospel in 15 seconds. Actually, you don't have to go by the way others are using the platform. We look at taking the technology that exists and make it applicable to our context and audience. And you might be like, well, there's no young people in our area. There's no young people at our church. Why on earth would I use some of these type of things? Well, let's not forget that Facebook was born out of Harvard's university by a load of students, and it was actually designed initially to connect students together, and it's growing to become the beast that it is. Now, the same can be said for a lot of other platforms. Some will become huge, some will die away, but actually having chats to, particularly to the younger people, to our kids and grandkids, and understanding what they're using is a great way actually to connect with younger generations and be aware of actually what at some point we might need ourselves to move towards using. The core thing which links us on to the next thread of conversation is that whatever happens, whichever social networks you're currently using or thinking of using, that's going to point to your website in terms of your digital presence. And that won't change. Your website might change in terms of how we present and do it, but social media platforms will probably come and go. Audiences' attention in those areas will come and go. But websites, as far as I can see for the foreseeable, will be the central hub of again, garnishing kind of core messaging stuff. So if there's any specific questions about websites, I'm really happy to have them now. I use Squarespace for our church's website. We can integrate Church Suite in that. We're able to put all of our YouTube content in, get to all our social. I can update it. In fact, I could rewrite the whole thing now from the mobile app. I find it so intuitive. I've used it a lot. Anyone else use Squarespace for the church website out of interest? No? Okay, cool. I should try and commission that one. Has anybody got any questions around the website and how best to go about actually doing that in this era? Yo, go for it, Nikki.
Well, that is something that we're looking at specifically now, is revamping our website to make it more appealing. Generally, we just cater to our local church and our church family, but we want to be more outward focused. So not knowing anything about it,
yeah.
Where do we start and what are the main things to focus on? What should we keep in mind?
Yeah, great question. Can I just ask, in terms of your internal, your church congregation at present, are you able to give me just roughly what that looks like in terms of kind of demographic and things? Is that possible?
We have quite a few elderly people, quite a few very well-established business people, very high ministry leaders, regional ministry leaders, very few youth, very little youth, teenage, and then a growing younger age.
Okay.
So does that help?
Yeah, it does. That's really cool. Okay, fantastic. So one of the great things about the era we're in is the nicest possible way to developers, we don't need developers like we used to do websites. So previously you would have had to find somebody to do all this for you. If you are in any way kind of computer confident, which a lot of us are these days, we can build websites using platforms like Squarespace, Wix, WordPress, Foursquare, things like that. Now, the platform I mentioned a minute ago, Squarespace, costs about £120 a year for the entry level. And these are template-based structures, which effectively means that it's a combination of blocks, effectively, the website, so that on a big screen, like I'm on my main computer at the minute, it's spread out to work well on that, and it will know the size the device is coming from and be responsive and move things in an order very easily so that it works well across smaller mobile devices. So all of the main platforms really that you can build websites in nowadays, template ones, accommodate that, which makes life so much easier, because that's not something addition we need to really think about. The core things to consider is when someone lands on the website, the first thing they're going to see, what is it? And what do you want them to do as a result? Is it that you want them to join a group? Is it that they, why have they come to you? Are they looking for community? Are they looking for spiritual guidance? Are they looking for worship? What is the thing that they're there to do, and how can you help answer that? So the first thing that we do on the well is we say, basically, welcome, so glad you're here. We've got a big photo that I took on my drone of our locality, so that they relate to the fact that it's the area and the fact that they're welcome. And then we go on to the main calls of action, which are to join an online gathering, alpha at the minute. And what's the third one? I don't know what the third one is at the minute. But it's obviously the great thing with these sites as well is you can easily change what those things are. Now, the great things about a lot of these websites as well is you can update them from a mobile app quite easily, which means you're on the go, which is really a wonderful thing to be able to do. And you can connect them into Squarespace is connected to a platform called Unsplash, which is over 1 million royalty-free photos. So you can easily find pictures if you've not got them to help tell the story. Now, where possible, you want to have people from your church and your leadership and things like that. But occasionally there's going to be images that you'll be able to find that are locationally relevant or help evoke the message that you're trying to get over, that you can use that for as well, which is really useful. The core things that my cheat sheet often is to look at. Some very big established churches use this effectively entry-level platform for their main website. So HTB, Gas Street, St. Thomas's in Newcastle all use Squarespace, and they've got obviously lots of different ministries going on, and they managed to really simplify it. And if I think, well, if those guys can do that and actually help make a clear user journey for people, then we can certainly do the same. So it's a good way to see how others present stuff. So I'd recommend checking out them. And then I would say in 2 months' time, check out wellsheffield.com once I've rebooted our website. It might be useful to do now, but in my opinion, we need to move some things around. But yeah, ultimately, you're trying to answer that problem. People's attention span when they land on the website normally is about 3.5 seconds. They're going to decide if they're going to stay on. You've got about 10 or 11 for them to commit to the secondary level. And after that, they'll stay a bit longer. But it's that first impression that what is the vision of the church, or what is the heart of who you are as a people that you can convey in that moment, and give them a clear click through to actually a way that they connect. What is that kind of core thing? And clear ways to connect are really important. I always feel it's important to say, this is how to connect with us, and this is when, or your social media connections, whatever those things might be. If you don't have a brand guidelines, if you don't have a logo and things like that, I'd recommend getting them, and then that actually makes life so much easier, because you can then tie that into the way that everything looks. So Canva, if you guys are aware of Canva at all as a design platform, that is free for not-for-profits, for churches. So that's the full paid resource, is completely free. Within that, you can, if you've not got a logo, you can create one. And the brand guidelines doesn't need to be complicated. You kind of have a brand with a couple of colors, a main header kind of fonts, and a body font, and they're the basics of what you need. And then you can apply that to every other context in which you're working with. The well is literally black and white, and our font and everything we do actually is designed to tie us into the community where we are in Sheffield, and actually sit well alongside the pubs and businesses where we are in our kind of context. You again will just need to work out what's right for your church context. But the point being is, once you've kind of got those things in place, it's like, well, the website's a no-brainer in terms of what fonts we use and what colours we use, because we've got a brand guideline. And the same questions when it comes to doing your social media. There's not a need to kind of get a different, create from scratch each time. So you apply the principles of that font family and colour palette to things, and then you've got that consistency going through. With the website front as well, just if you're not picked up on it, there's a couple of places which are really good to get opinions on church kind of website stuff. So there's a guy called Brady Shearer, prochurchtools.com. They've got an incredible YouTube channel, and he will do an annual review of the websites, of best websites of the year. And when I say best, that doesn't necessarily mean the biggest, and like, we're not talking Hillsongs and stuff. We're talking websites which tick all the boxes on the tin, and do. One final thing: places like Squarespace and other sites now are allowing you to have a member access area and a public area, which is fantastic for when it comes to the type of things we're presenting. So the church family member can go on and they log in, and they can get all their details about maybe if they're rotated to come and help in a particular way, or if there's you might be running a Thursday night teaching course or something, and that information can all be safe, private, and seen in that context. And then the public-facing site can actually have all the relevant information for something which is accessible for everybody, particularly thinking though of people as they come past the church, those type of folks. I'm aware I've gassed a lot there. Any other points off the back of that, Ankia, or any other website questions? Mandy, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, just a quick question. You know how you can often go into a supermarket and they've changed where they put everything in the supermarket and it's on different shelves, you don't know where you are. Do you recommend you have that sort of revamp of your website every so often, so that maybe people who are regularly coming to look, they may be getting a little bit bored with, oh, it's the same old thing, same old week in, week out, but you have a bit of a restructure and re-engage people with your website or social media? Same with Facebook and things like that. Is it worth that revamping? And if you do, what sort of recommendation, how often do you do it?
Yeah, cool. That's a really interesting question. And I would say that to an extent, yes, that's not a bad idea. What you don't want to have to happen is people come and get frustrated because they can't find the thing that they were there to look for before. Where you can keep things updated, certainly, is in the imagery and things. And, hopefully when we are able to meet again and things, and it's easier to get photos and stuff, getting a disclaimer form from folks so you can actually get as many photos as possible in church. We put a poster in our church just to say that we're filming here, show the areas where we're not filming. So if you don't want to be on photos, that's where you need to be and things. But trying to get as much content as possible that you can then archive and use whenever possible. So for example, I've got photos of the well in virtually every weather circumstance you can think about, so that should I, working from home and it snows, I can go, great, I don't need to go to church to get a photo of the snow right now, because I actually got a photo of the church in the snow from last time it snowed. I've got one of a beautiful spring summer's morning. Next time I'm actually on holiday in Cornwall, I can see on the weather that it's sunny in Sheffield. I can post that picture right now. So having an archive of content that you can draw upon and keep things updated, keep things refreshed, is a real bit of an artillery to be able to draw on that stuff, which is really, really useful. In terms of social media, ultimately what we're trying to do is stop people from scrolling, because that's what people tend to do. You zoom through. We're trying to create things. So having a bit of variation in terms of how we present things on our Facebook and our things like that, all for that. And I guess in a way, that's where maybe the brand stuff, whilst important, is good to keep an open mind about ways in which we can actually try and stop people. So I break the rules sometimes, and I actually will make the font really small on some posts I do on Instagram, for example, because I want people to struggle to actually read it and have to kind of stop to actually pick up on it. That's one of the logics, my crazy logics I have at least. By contrast, on a website, you always want to make sure that it's a minimum 16 to 18 pixels, so that it can actually be seen clearly by people, and where possible, trying to keep accessibility as something which is really important to folk. But yeah, the website, if you can move things around to an extent that keeps it llooking fresh, great. A website ideally should be reviewed properly every 2 to 3 years to kind of go, is this fulfilling its purpose? Do we need to actually move forward? And I think platforms like Squarespace, again, you've built a website, it's costing you £120 a year. If you or someone in your church can update it yourselves, actually you can do a whole new design refresh within that platform without needing to spend circa £2,000, which is what you would do on a full website build. Someone said, what is the overall cost of an effective website for a tiny church? If you've got someone that can actually do this for you, then a platform like Squarespace in theory is not going to cost you, including hosting and everything, it shouldn't cost more than £180 per year to do. If a website is causing you grief, one thing you can actually do, if budget's a real issue, is actually just own the domain. So let's say it's stpaul's.co.uk, which I'm sure is taken, but stpaul's.co.uk, you can actually point that specifically, say, to a Facebook page or a designated single page for a very, very little amount, which ultimately has, we're a church that believe this, contact us here to find out more, and then actually, as a tiny church, no doubt you'll be able to field, hopefully, the inquiries that come through. And if you become a not so tiny church, in theory, you'd have a budget to be able to step up to add page 2, 3, and 4 to the website. But there are platforms like that, and Wix and WordPress, where you can start themes for free as well, and just point the website address to said website. I'm conscious we've got like 5 minutes left. Just rather than working to my own agenda, is there any questions in any context of church comms, and maybe the folks who've not spoke yet, that you want to raise? Otherwise, I can carry on. Now is your time to jump off your seat, people. Welcome to Steve, who's joined later on as well, mate.
Yeah, my apologies for joining late. It's been one of the wonders of being bivocational. There we go.
That's all good, man. Absolutely not a problem at all. Is there? Yeah, go for it, Kevin.
Yeah. Is there the Christian equivalent of story blocks where you can get lots of video content with Christian content?
Great question. Yes, there is a site called Nucleus.
Nucleus, right.
That's a paid-for platform, which actually by the same guys I mentioned before, Pro Church Tools. They do lots of videos and also social media content. It's not exactly what we would call cheap. It's probably 500 quid a year.
Yeah.
But it does exist. The other thing is liveswap.com. Just check that's the domain, LIV. .com, liveswap.com, and that is a place which is some paid and some is free. I know the guys that run this, and in fact, Kevin, sorry, let me tell you differently to that. It's they run 2 companies. Creationswap.com. That's creationswap.com. Okay, and that is where a lot of churches will actually share kind of content that they created and want to make available to everybody else. It's something that we're trying to encourage more to happen in the Church Comms Collective as well, where, for example, this Christmas we made all of our carols available for people to use. If we're making it and can help others, if we can share that out between us, then sometimes it can really help tick a box. So I'd recommend checking out those places.
We also have a problem with worship groups. We've got 2 worship leaders, and that they tend not to do every week. So we're then having to use sort of other stuff to fill in. Again, we're looking for royalty-free content that we can use.
In the context of, so you can't do it publicly, I don't think, but in the context of Zooms and stuff, I know that big churches like Hillsong have they're happy for the copyright stuff on them. They're happy for stuff to be used in those kind of contexts, just not reshared on their public.
Yeah, so it's to go onto YouTube, so obviously we've got to be careful.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
One church, guys, that I thought I'd just let you make you aware of is called Kingdom Company, that are based in Manchester. Their website is kingdomcompany.co, and these guys set up their church, Matt and Claire. They're planning to open the doors just as COVID hit, and but they weren't able to do that. They took everything online, and their Instagram in particular is quite incredible in terms of what they do. But the good thing they do is they answer questions that most people would answer. Most people would ask. I'm trying to find a good example of type of content they've put in, but like how to find hope, what's truth and things. And they're kind of answering everyday things, 6 Bible verses to help you get through a lockdown. And it's just kind of like, that's really quick. It's really digestible. And one of the things I talked about in my talk before is the need for 2 forms of content, broccoli and chocolate. Broccoli being stuff which is long form, nutritious, like a long, decent read. It's part of a broader meal, versus the quick fix of chocolate, which you just need to get you through things. And sometimes actually a bit of truth in scriptures can really do that. There's some churches out there like those guys that are doing a really good job. I recommend checking them out. Susanna just said again about Wix.com that she's used for her website. Again, that is for an acquire context. Wix do some good stuff, and you can get a free platform with those guys as well. Cool. I'm aware of the time. My email address is in the chat. ben.elliott@wellsheffield.com. If you've got any specific questions, I'm really happy to look at your church's stuff and answer those. Also, I will share the Church Comms Collective as soon as we finish this call, rather than taking my eyes off you wonderful people. I'll share a link to the Church Comms Collective, which is a Facebook group which you're welcome to be a part of, where literally any question is a good question. We get such varied stuff that pop up in there, and it's a peer-to-peer. So one of the nice things about that is you get, you know, well-rounded perspectives from different sized churches and ministries coming to your aid, which I've valued greatly in the last couple of years that I've been doing my role as a church communicator. Great, we are coming into land. So if it's all right with everyone, I think we have to call it a day there. I'm just going to pray over you guys quickly for the rest of this conference and all you're doing. But yeah, I'm not just saying my details are there for pleasantries, it's there generally to help. So if I can, do reach out to me, guys. So, Lord God, I just thank you for every single one of these people in front of me now. Thank you that we're connected through you and the powers of modern technology, and how wonderful it is to have this conversation today. And I bless each and every one of these guys as they just hear your heart for them and in their ministry, in the churches they're working. And we pray, Lord, that you would really utilize them to be able to share your truth and your goodness in their communities, in their church families, in their locality they are, Lord. And I thank you that we have this possibility of using this technology to do that. I pray we'll be able to see your plans in the bigger picture over the intricacies of everyday stuff. Yeah, you're good. We love you, and thank you, Lord, that we can meet together on this shared grounds. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Bless you guys.